A hedgerow is a line of closely spaced shrubs and tree species, planted and trained to form a barrier to mark the boundary of an area. Hedges used to separate a road from adjoining fields or one field from another, and of sufficient age to incorporate larger trees, are known as hedgerows. It is also a simple form of topiary. History. The development of hedges over the centuries is preserved in the structure. The first hedges enclosed land for cereal crops during the Neolithic age. The farms were of about 5 to 10 hectares, with fields about 0.1 hectares for hand cultivation. Some hedges date from the Bronze and Iron Ages, 2,000 to 4,000 years ago, when traditional patterns of landscape became established. Others were built during the medieval field rationalizations, more originated in the industrial boom of the 18th and 19th centuries, when heaths and uplands were enclosed. Many hedgerows separating fields from lanes in the United Kingdom, Ireland and the Low Countries are estimated to have been in existence for more than 700 years, originating in the medieval period. The root word of hedge is much older. It appears in the Old English language, in German and Dutch, to mean enclosure, as in the name of the Dutch city The Hague, or more formally, Gravenhage, meaning the Count's Hedge. Charles the Bald is recorded as complaining in 864, at a time when most official fortifications were constructed of wooden palisades, that some unauthorized men were constructing tightly interwoven hedges of hawthorns. In parts of Britain, early hedges were destroyed to make way for the manorial open field system. Many were replaced after the Enclosure Acts, then removed again during modern agricultural intensification, and now some are being replanted for wildlife. Composition. A hedge may consist of a single species or several, typically mixed at random. In many newly planted British hedges, at least 60% of the shrubs are hawthorn, blackthorn, and hazel, alone or in combination. The first two are particularly effective barriers to livestock. Other shrubs and trees used include holly, beech, oak, ash, and willow. The last three can become very tall. Of the hedgerows in the Normandy region of France, Martin Blumenson said, "The hedgerow is a fence, half earth, half hedge. The wall at the base is a dirt parapet that varies in thickness from 1 to 4 or more feet and in height from 3 to 12 feet. Growing out of the wall is a hedge of hawthorn, brambles, vines, and trees, in thickness from 1 to 3 feet. Originally property demarcations, hedgerows protect crops and cattle from the ocean winds that sweep across the land. Species formal or modern garden hedges are grown in many varieties, including the following species: Berberis thunbergi, Buxus sempervirens, Carpnus batiolus crateregus, Monogyna faga sylvatica purpurea, Ilex aquifolium ligustrum ovalifolium Photinia fraseri, Prunus laurocerasis, Prunus lusitanica, Quercus Ilex taxus spicata, Thuja occidentalis, Thuja plicata. Hedgerow trees. Hedgerow trees are trees that grow in hedgerows but have been allowed to reach the full height and width. There are thought to be around 1.8 million hedgerow trees in Britain, with perhaps 98% of these being in England and Wales. Hedgerow trees are both an important part of the English landscape and are valuable habitats for wildlife. Many hedgerow trees are veteran trees and therefore of great wildlife interest. The most common species are oak and ash, though in the past elm would also have been common. Around 20 million elm trees, most of them hedgerow trees, were felled or died through Dutch elm disease in the late 1960s. Many other species are used, notably including beech and various nut and fruit trees. The age structure of British hedgerow trees is old because the number of new trees is not sufficient to replace the number of trees that are lost. Through aged disease, new trees can be established by planting, but it is generally more successful to leave standard trees behind when laying hedges. Trees should be left at no closer than 10 meters apart, and the distances should vary so as to create a more natural landscape. The distance allows the young trees to develop full crowns without competing or producing too much shade. It is suggested that hedgerow trees cause gaps in hedges, but it has been found that cutting some lower branches off lets sufficient light through to the hedge below to allow it to grow. The importance of hedgerows hedges are recognized as part of a cultural heritage and historical record, and for the great value to wildlife and the landscape. Increasingly, they are valued too for the major role they have to play in preventing soil loss and reducing pollution, and for the potential to regulate water supply and to reduce flooding. Historically, hedges were used as a source of firewood, and for providing shelter from wind, rain and sun for crops, farm animals and people. Today, mature hedges uses include screening unsightly developments, hedge laying. If hedges are not maintained and trimmed regularly, gaps tend to form at the base over many years. In essence, hedge laying consists of cutting most of the way through the stem of each plant near the base, bending it over and interweaving or pleaching it between wooden stakes. This also encourages new growth from the base of each plant. Originally, the main purpose of hedge laying was to ensure the hedge remained stock-proof. Some side branches were also removed and used as firewood. The maintenance and laying of hedges to form an impenetrable barrier for farm animals is a skilled art. In Britain there are many local hedge-laying traditions, each with a distinct style. Hedges are still being laid today not only for aesthetic and functional purposes but also for their ecological role in helping wildlife and protecting against soil erosion. Hedge trimming, an alternative to hedge laying, is trimming using a tractor-mounted flail cutter, a circular saw, or a hedge trimmer. The height of the cutting can be increased a little every year. Trimming a hedge helps to promote bushy growth. If a flail cutter is used, then the flail must be kept sharp to ensure that the cutting is effective on the hedge. The disadvantage of this is that the hedge species takes a number of years before it will flower again and subsequently bear fruit for wildlife and people. If the hedge is trimmed repeatedly at the same height, a hard knuckle will start to form at that height, similar to the shape of a pollard tree. General hedge management. A hedgerow management scale has been devised by an organization called HedgeLink UK, ranging from 1 to 10. 1 describes the action to take for a heavily overtrimmed hedge. 5 is a healthy dense hedgerow more than 2 meters in height, and 10 is a hedge that has not been managed at all and has become a line of trees. The RSPB suggests that hedges in Britain not be cut between March and August. This is to protect nesting birds, which are protected by law. Coppicing. The techniques of coppicing and hard pollarding can be used to rejuvenate a hedge where hedge laying is not appropriate. Hedgerow dating. Hedges that have existed for hundreds of years are colonized by additional species. This may be useful to determine the age of the hedge. Hooper's rule, based on ecological data obtained from hedges of known age, suggests that the age of the hedge is equal to the number of woody species, counted in a 30-yard distance multiplied by 110 years. Dr. Max Hooper published his original formula in the book Hedges in 1974. This method is only a rule of thumb, and can be off by a couple of centuries. It should always be backed up by documentary evidence, if possible, and take into account other factors. Caveats include the fact that planted hedgerows with elm, and hedgerows in the north of England tend not to follow the rule as closely. The formula also does not work on hedges more than 1,000 years old. Dr. Hooper's scheme is important not least for its potential use in determining what an important hedgerow is, given the protection in the hedgerows regulations of the Department of the Environment, based on age and other factors. Hedges in gardening. Hedges, both clipped and unclipped, are often used as ornament in the layout of gardens. Typical woody plants for clipped hedges include privet, hawthorn, beech, yew, leyland cypress, hemlock, arbor vitae, barberry, box, holly, oleander, lavender, among others. An early 20th century fashion was for tapestry hedges, using a mix of golden, green and glaucous dwarf conifers, or beech and copper beech. Unclipped hedges take up more space, generally at a premium in modern gardens, but compensate by flowering. Rosa multiflora is widely used as a dense hedge along the central reservation of dual carriageway roads, such as parkways in the United States. In mild climates, more exotic flowering hedges are formed, using ceanothus, hibiscus, camellia, orange jessamine, or lily-pilly. It is also possible to prepare really nice and dense hedge from other deciduous plants. However, they do not have decorative flowers as the bushes mentioned before. Hedges of clipped trees forming avenues are a feature of 16th-century Italian gardens such as the Boboli Gardens in Florence, and of formal French gardens in the manner of André Le Notre, e.g. at Versailles. The hedge on stilts of clipped hornbeams at Hidcote Manor Garden, Gloucestershire, is famous and has sometimes been imitated. Hedges below knee-height are generally thought of as borders, elaborately shaped and interlaced borders forming knot gardens of parterres were fashionable in Europe during the 16th and early 17th centuries. Generally they were appreciated from a raised position, either the windows of a house or a terrace. Clipped hedges above eye level may be laid out in the form of a labyrinth or garden maze. Few such mazes survived the change of fashion towards more naturalistic plantings in the 18th and 19th centuries, but many were replanted in 20th century restorations of older gardens. An example is behind the Governor's Palace, Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia. Hedges and pruning can both be used to enhance a garden's privacy, as a buffer to visual pollution and to hide fences. A hedge can be aesthetically pleasing, as in a tapestry hedge, where alternate species are planted at regular intervals to present different colors or textures. Regulations of hedge height placement. In the U.S., some local jurisdictions may strictly regulate the placement or height of a hedge, such as the case where a Palo Alto city resident allowed her xylosma hedge to grow above 2 feet and was arrested for it. In the UK, a large hedge may become an offence. High hedges are covered under Part 8 of the Anti-Social Behaviour Act 2003. This applies more to owners of high evergreen hedges. For a hedge to qualify as antisocial, it must be made up of a line of 2 or more evergreen or semi-evergreen trees or shrubs and be over 2 meters high. To some degree, it must be a barrier to light or access. Because of its height, it must be adversely affecting the complainant's reasonable enjoyment of the domestic property. Live fencing. Live fencing is the use of live woody species for fences. This may either consist of individual fence posts connected with wire or other fencing material, or it may be in the form of densely planted hedges without interconnecting wire. Hedge types. Instant hedge. The term instant hedge has become known since early this century for hedging plants that are planted collectively in such a way as to form a mature hedge from the moment they are planted together, with a height of at least 1.2 meters. This is usually created from hedging elements or individual plants, which means very few are actually hedges from the start, as the plants need time to grow and entwine to form a real hedge. An example of an instant hedge can be seen at the Elvedon Hall estate in East Anglia, where fields of hedges can be seen growing in cultivated rows. Since 1998, The development of this type of mature hedge has led to such products being specified by landscape architects, garden designers, property developers, insurance companies, sports clubs, schools and local councils, as well as many private homeowners. Demand has also increased from planning authorities in specifying to developers that mature hedges are planted rather than just whips. A real instant hedge could be defined as having a managed root growth system allowing the hedge to be sold with a continuous root strips which then enables year-round planting. During its circa 8-year production time, all stock should be irrigated, clipped and treated with controlled release nutrients to optimize health. Quickset hedge. A quickset hedge is a type of hedge created by planting live hazel or white thorn cuttings directly into the earth. Once planted, these cuttings root and form new plants, creating a dense barrier. The technique is ancient, and the term quickset hedge is first recorded in 1484. The word quick in the name refers to the fact that the cuttings are living, and not to the speed at which the hedge grows, although it will establish quite rapidly. An alternative meaning of quickset hedging is any hedge formed of living plants or of living plants combined with a fence. The technique of quicksetting can also be used for many other shrubs and trees. Devon hedge. A Devon hedge is an earth bank topped with shrubs. The bank may be faced with turf or faced with stone. If stone-faced, the stones are generally placed on edge, though around gateways the stones are often placed flat. A quarter of Devon's hedges are thought to be over 800 years old. There are approximately 33,000 miles of Devon hedge, which is more than any other county. Traditional farming throughout the county has meant that fewer Devon hedges have been removed than elsewhere. Devon hedges are particularly important for wildlife habitat. Around 20% of the UK's species-rich hedges occur within Devon. Over 600 species of flowering plants, 1,500 species of insects, 65 species of birds and 20 species of mammals have been recorded living or feeding in Devon hedges. Hedge laying in Devon is usually referred to as steeping and involves cutting and laying steepers along the top of the bank and securing them with crooks. Cornish hedge. A Cornish hedge is an earth bank with stones. It normally consists of large stone blocks constructed either side of a narrow earth bank and held in place with interlocking stones. The neat rows of square stones at the top are called edges. The top of the hedge is planted with grass turf. Sometimes hedging plants or trees are planted on the hedge to increase its windbreaking height. A rich flora develops over the lifespan of a Cornish hedge. The Cornish hedge contributes to the distinctive field pattern of the Cornish landscape and its semi-natural wildlife habitat. There are about 30,000 miles of hedges in Cornwall today. Hedges suffer from the effects of tree roots, burrowing rabbits, rain, wind, farm animals and people. How often repairs are needed depends on how well the hedge was built, its stone, and what has happened to it since it was last repaired. Typically a hedge needs a cycle of repair every 150 years or so, or less often if it is fenced. Building new hedges and repairing existing hedges is a skilled craft, and there are professional hedges in Cornwall. The Cornish Hedge Research and Education Group supports the development of traditional skills and works with Cornwall Council, FWAG, Stone Academy Bodmin, Cornwall AONB, Country Trust and Professional Hedges to ensure the future of Cornish hedges in the landscape. World's Great Hedges. The 19th-century Great Hedge of India was probably the largest example of a hedge used as a barrier. It was planted and used to collect taxes by the British. The Willow Palisade. constructed during the early Qing dynasty to control people movement and to collect taxes on ginseng and timber in southern Manchuria, also had hedge-like features. The palisade included 2 dikes and a moat between them. The dikes topped by rows of willow trees, tied to one another with the branches, gradually decaying throughout the late 18th and 19th centuries. The palisade disappeared in the early 20th century, its remaining willows cut during the Russo-Japanese War of 1904–05 by the two countries' soldiers. The McClure Beech hedges, located near McClure in Scotland, are noted in the Guinness World Records as the tallest and longest hedge on Earth, reaching 30 meters in height and 530 meters in length. The beech trees were planted in 1745 by Jean Mercer on the Marquess of Lansdowne's McClure estate.